Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Seriously, it's great to have you here today. Before we jump into this fascinating and slightly strange topic, I just want to send out some really good vibes to each and every one of you watching. Wherever you are in the world, I genuinely hope you're feeling healthy, strong, and taking good care of yourselves. Okay, let's talk about something that sounds like an old myth, but turns out to be surprisingly true. Why do people who are lost, especially in places like thick forests, big deserts, or even in heavy fog, often end up walking in circles? You've probably heard the stories, maybe even seen it in movies. Someone gets lost in the woods, they try their hardest to walk straight, but hours later, they stumble right back to where they started, or find their own footprints going the other way. It seems almost unbelievable, right? How hard can it be to just walk in a straight line? Well, as scientists have discovered, it's actually incredibly hard for our brains and bodies without clear reference points. It's not about being stupid or panicking, though that doesn't help. It's deeply rooted in how our senses, especially our sense of balance and direction, work, or sometimes don't work perfectly when we're deprived of visual clues. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a huge, flat desert. The sun is directly overhead, so there are no shadows. Or picture yourself deep in a dense forest where every tree looks almost identical and the canopy above blocks most of the sky and sunlight. Or maybe you're caught in a blinding snowstorm where you can barely see your hand in front of your face. In situations like these, the usual things your brain relies on to tell you you're going straight, things like distant landmarks, a mountain, a distinctive tree, a building, the position of the sun or stars, or even a long, straight path, they all vanish. You're left with just your own body's internal sense of direction. And here's the catch, that internal sense isn't like a perfectly calibrated compass. It's more like a slightly wobbly gyroscope that needs constant checking against the outside world to stay accurate. When those external checks disappear, the wobbles start to add up, and without realizing it, you begin to curve. So, what's going on inside us that causes this curving? Scientists believe it's mainly down to 3 interconnected systems in our body, and none of them are perfect, especially when stressed or deprived of information. The first big player is your vestibular system. This is a tiny, incredibly sophisticated setup deep inside your inner ear. It's filled with fluid and little hair-like sensors. When you move your head, tilt it, turn it, nod it, this fluid sloshes around and bends those tiny hairs. This sends signals to your brain telling it exactly how your head is oriented in space. Are you upright? Leaning? Turning? It's fundamental for balance and knowing which way is up. But here's the thing. The vestibular system is fantastic for detecting changes in movement, like starting to turn or stopping. It's much less precise at telling your brain exactly how far you've turned or whether you're maintaining a perfectly straight line over a long distance, especially if the turn is very, very gradual. Think of it like trying to measure a tiny leak in a bucket with a huge measuring cup. The small changes are hard to track precisely over time. The second key system is called proprioception. This is your body's sense of where all its parts are and how they're moving relative to each other without you having to look. Close your eyes and touch your nose. That's proprioception at work. It relies on sensors in your muscles, tendons, and joints constantly sending information to your brain about stretch, tension, and position. This is crucial for walking. However, no human body is perfectly symmetrical. Almost everyone has tiny, almost imperceptible differences. Maybe one leg is a fraction of an inch longer than the other. Maybe one foot turns out slightly more when you step. Perhaps one hip is a tiny bit tighter, or you unconsciously put a tiny bit more weight on one leg with each step. Even the strength in your muscles might differ minutely from one side to the other. When you're walking normally on a path or a street, your eyes and your brain use landmarks to constantly correct for these tiny imbalances. You don't even notice them. But take away those visual corrections in a featureless environment, and those tiny differences start to matter. That slightly longer leg or the foot that turns out a bit might cause you to take imperceptibly longer strides on one side or push off with slightly more force. Over hundreds or thousands of steps, this tiny bias adds up, pulling you into a very gentle curve. It's like a car where the wheels are almost perfectly aligned, but not quite. Drive it long enough in a straight line without steering corrections, and it will slowly drift to one side. The third factor is your brain itself, particularly when you're lost and stressed. Feeling lost is scary. It triggers anxiety, fear, and panic. When we're stressed, our brain doesn't function as clearly. We might not think rationally. Our senses can feel overwhelmed, and crucially, we tend to focus intensely on immediate threats or escape, not on meticulous navigation. This stress can make us rely even more on those imperfect internal senses, vestibular and proprioception, and less on trying to carefully observe any subtle clues that might still be present in the environment, like the faint direction of the wind, the slope of the land, or the way moss might grow on trees, though that last one is actually very unreliable. Panic can also make us walk faster, which ironically makes those tiny step imbalances have an even bigger effect per minute, tightening the circle we walk in without us realizing it. We become convinced we're walking straight towards safety, while our body's subtle asymmetries and our stressed brain are quietly steering us around in a loop. Now, why are forests particularly notorious for this? They combine several challenges perfectly. First, they often lack distant landmarks. Trees block the view beyond a short distance, making everything look similar, the dreaded sea of trees effect. Second, the canopy frequently blocks clear views of the sun or sky, especially on cloudy days, making it hard to use celestial navigation. Third, the ground is often uneven, covered in roots, rocks, and slopes. While you think you're walking straight, the terrain itself might be subtly pushing you one way or another, and without landmarks, you can't tell. You might be unconsciously veering slightly downhill or around obstacles in a consistent direction, adding another layer of curve. Foggy conditions, heavy snow, or dense jungles create the same problem. They remove the visual horizon and reference points, forcing you back onto those internal, wobbly senses. Scientists didn't just take people's word for this walking in circles phenomenon, they actually tested it. In one famous study done a few years back, researchers took volunteers into a huge, flat forest area and also into a large, open desert. They equipped them with GPS trackers. Then, they simply asked them to try and walk as straight a line as possible to a point about a mile away, without any compass or other tools. Sometimes the sun was out. Sometimes it was cloudy. The results were startling. On sunny days with the sun visible, people did reasonably well walking straight. But on cloudy days in the forest or in the desert with no landmarks, almost everyone walked in circles, sometimes surprisingly tight ones, and they often crossed their own paths multiple times without ever realizing it. Their GPS tracks looked like messy coils or overlapping loops. This proved it wasn't just panic in life or death situations. It happens to calm people in controlled experiments when visual cues are missing. Our internal guidance system, without external calibration, is simply not designed for long-distance straight-line navigation in uniform environments. Understanding this isn't just a cool science fact, it's potentially life-saving knowledge. If you ever find yourself lost in the wilderness, knowing that your natural tendency is to walk in circles can help you make better decisions. The standard advice from survival experts is often summed up by the acronym STOP. Sit down, think, observe, plan. Don't just start walking blindly, trusting your gut feeling that this way must be out. You are very likely to start curving without realizing it, wasting precious energy and potentially getting even more lost and disoriented. Instead, stop moving. Take deep breaths to calm the panic. Think about your situation. Observe your surroundings carefully. Are there any reliable cues? Can you hear a river or highway? Is there a consistent wind direction? Is the sun visible? Can you see any distant high points? If you absolutely must move without a compass or GPS, try to line up two objects in the distance, like two specific trees, and walk directly towards them. Once you reach the first, pick another object directly beyond the second one on the same line, and keep going. This handrailing technique gives you short, straight segments using visible references, helping to overcome the tendency to curve. Even better, always carry a simple compass and know how to use it. It bypasses your unreliable internal senses completely and gives you a constant external reference to straight. So, the next time you hear a story about someone lost in the woods walking in circles, remember it's not just a tale. It's a real, documented phenomenon driven by the fascinating, yet imperfect, way our bodies sense movement and direction. It's a combination of tiny physical asymmetries in our legs and stride, the limitations of our inner ear's balance system for detecting very gradual turns over long distances, and the way our brain struggles to maintain course without clear visual landmarks to constantly correct our path. Stress and panic only amplify these natural tendencies. It's a humbling reminder that our perception of the world and our path through it isn't always as accurate as we think, especially when our primary navigation tools, our eyes, are taken out of the equation. It shows how much we rely on the world around us to tell us where we are and where we're going. Our brains are amazing, but they aren't infallible compasses. They're prediction machines built for efficiency in familiar environments, not perfect pathfinders in trackless wastes. Knowing this quirk of our biology can make us better prepared, more humble in the face of nature, and, ultimately, safer when we venture into the wild. Stay curious, stay safe out there, and thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourselves.